So this is a Muslim woman who is circumcised, and she doesn't think that she's harmed, and we're going to listen to her.
رايت بالنسبه لك ماشي، لانه ممكن المراه يكون عندها وجع، يكون عندها الم. ما في مشكله، بس احنا قمنا بعادات وتقاليد ما حنتنازل عنها. حتى انا لو شخصيا لو يكون عندي بنات هعملهم، هختنهم. ليه؟ كده عادات وتقاليد. بس ما فكرت انه ممكن تاذي البنت؟ لأن لا لا، ما بتتاذي، ما بتجي حاجه. امهاتنا ليه ما تاذوه؟ انت شخصيا تعرضتي للختان؟ تعرضت وحعرض بناتي. تعرضتي انت للختان ورح تعرضي بناتك كمان؟ بس ما عم تاذيهم انت بهيدي الطريقه؟ لا ما قاعد اذيهم، ما اذيهم.
All right, so to the Western nation, that might seem shocking, but the very same pattern is seen with circumcised men here in the United States. They do not consider themselves harmed. Um, One, it could be related to they hold inaccurate beliefs concerning the intact genitalia. Or two, they just don't know the difference. Ignorance is bliss. If they grew up their whole life having altered genitalia, they don't know the difference. So it's easier to accept that it was something good for them and to reinforce that by passing it down.
Right. And you know that woman has zero understanding of the anatomical significance of the anatomy that she's talking about. It's also hard to say, though, as FGM is a spectrum, what she actually had done to her, very likely as a child. Although some women do voluntarily choose certain what we call FGM practices, but sometimes in the West or in a medicalized or cosmetic context, it's just referred to as labia reduction or clitoral hood reduction and things like that. I personally consider all of these things mutilation and should be avoided at all cost, and you shouldn't necessarily even be able to go to a physician and request cosmetic labial or clitoral hood reductions, except in very specific contexts where there is like this anatomical anomaly, or you can really reduce the chance of any sensory loss. I think that it's a similar type of argument as, oh, I want to go in and get my retinal tissue behind my eye amputated or something, right? The sensory capacity is too significant to just frivolously have amputated away. So it's something to me like your sight is, or something like that. And great care, caution, and concern should be utilized around this type of tissue, this class of tissue, if you will. What I'm really coining as our primary sexual sensory tissues, like the clitoral hood, I consider almost like an extension of the clitoris itself in many ways. So it's hard to say, though, what this woman had done to her. So if it was like a few millimeters, or not even millimeters, but centimeters, which unit is actually smaller? Do you know off the top of your head? I'm using this terminology. Whatever unit is smaller, I think it is millimeters is
Yeah,
smaller.
right.
Yeah, millimeters. So if it was like literally 1 millimeter of tissue removed from her clitoral hood, then she might not really think it's that invasive of a practice as a whole. And so you never really get into the specifics of it. But regardless, any amount of tissue removed from a neonate or a child or a juvenile is heinous. Any amount of their specialized sexual sensory tissue is absolutely heinous. So it's hard to say, though, obviously, what she had done to her, as there is a spectrum. But she has no understanding. She never got out a chart and said, "Hey, what is this anatomy that we're talking about here?" So these people are extremely difficult to deal with because they're not going to educate themselves on the anatomical significance. They're going to avoid that conversation at all costs. They're going to see it through the perspective of, well, in this moment right now, psychologically, I feel fine. So if I feel fine about this, I feel fine about doing it to my child. And imagine if a trans person said that or something like that. Like, I'm not going to get into that whole debate right now, but even a lot of trans people, they understand, okay, I might feel this way about myself, but I certainly wouldn't preemptively trans my child with a radical genital surgery. The majority of them would not ever move forward on that for their child. Somehow that concept is not applying in this case. If I, for example, had to get my tonsils removed or something, which I advocate against in nearly all instances. I know some people might feel differently about that, but I think they should be preserved at all costs. I certainly wouldn't be like, oh, I need to do a routine surgery on my, I had them removed, so why wouldn't I get them removed on a child? And I don't think that's the perfect argument, but it really goes for any cosmetic thing. Oh, I want to get my earlobes amputated off because I think it looks nicer or something like that. Why would you think your child would want the same
Mm.
in that instance? And obviously there's all of this cultural inertia and in these societies where we do it, oftentimes like the majority of people are this way. So it's the default for them. But yeah, I think that's a very interesting video, and I think a lot of people in the West would be shocked by it because FGM is presented as this heinous, horrible thing that no woman would ever want. That it's largely men that are maybe even facilitating it and pressuring it onto women. And we see that that's just not the case. It's very similar psychological mechanisms that are taking place here are taking place there as well. Um, and the women are under the impression that this was advantageous for them and that it's cleaner and healthier, and just the same bullshit arguments are applying to their culture as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We see the same exact excuses from hygiene to aesthetics to culture, tradition. But one thing that stands out to me that's different is that we accept that FGM causes sexual loss and a decrease in sexual functionality. But for some reason, we don't carry that same standard for circumcision. People don't understand that circumcision does destroy sexual function. And
Yeah.
I kind of think that could be related to how we see men and women, the masculine and feminine. There could be an aspect of viewing women as sex objects and viewing men as sex subjects or sexual slaves. Let's be honest, the main motivation of men to do anything in life, to build these cities, to create technology, to provide, is to get sex from women, right? So we have a total opposing viewpoint on the sexual functions between man and woman. So we need a reckoning that circumcision does destroy sexual pleasure, sexual functionality, just like it does for women. And perhaps that's one of the main underlying motivations of doing it, whether or not people are aware of that's why they're doing it. But this video was really interesting to me because it kind of shows how somebody who's circumcised is prone to pass it down. It's easier for them to believe it was something that was good for them. It's earth-shattering and worldview destroying to come to the realization that we were harmed by the people and the systems that we trusted.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to push back just a little bit on and maybe raise a discussion, but we don't have to go down this tangent as well, is around men's sole motivating force being sexual access. I think that there is a more wholesome dimension to men as well, although I think you are at the very least partially correct in their motivating factors. I think men also want to build families and they want to have children, or there's a sizable portion of men, and um, they want women for companionship as well. Like there's more to um, men see women as more than just sex, I think, in a lot of instances, and there's a very wholesome dimension to it as well. But what I would say is that it seems like female sexuality is very celebrated, while male sexuality is very dismissed or shunned or looked at as something negative in a lot of instances.
Hmm.
And just men's sensuality in general. I think women have a lot more freedom and flexibility to even be sexual beings in our society, where men, it's very repressed, pushed under the rug, and even made fun of and thought of as gross in a lot of instances. And I think women and men would say the same about female sexuality at times, but it does seem a lot more prevalent and free flowing and they're able to express themselves sexually a lot easier than men are. And we can say, it's toxic masculinity, it's these types of things, but I think it's both men and women playing a role in this repression of male sexuality right now. I think that is the honest answer. And I could even show some examples of this that I come across online. Like what women are really shaming men's sexuality left and right, in my opinion. And I see copious examples of this online all the time. And I have a lot of ammunition to even present around that. And I think that partially led to where we're at today with infant circumcision, and why female circumcision didn't take off in the West like it did is our cultural understanding of male sexuality and the way we treat it. And just men in general. Men are seen as radically more disposable than women. The most obvious example being the draft and things like that. And the worst example right now being in Ukraine, for example, where the women are free to travel outside of the country at any time, and the men are being ripped off of the streets. They're all like complaining about it now, and they're being sent into the meat grinder to be annihilated, essentially, where the women are running off to other countries. And we see some actually pretty interesting video evidence of at times what they're even doing in other countries. So they certainly, in my opinion, in a lot of instances, didn't stand by their men and things like that. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on that tangent right there. It's not really related to what we're talking about, but it's really just to highlight the depth of disposability of men. And in this case, even our sexuality and our literal sexual tissues. So that's what I'd say on that subject.
That's a great insight. I hadn't considered the sexual repression side of basically suppressing male sexuality and celebrating female sexuality, but that's a great point. Um, so, what do you think about the dynamic between mothers and fathers who pass this along? I tend to find more culpability to the mothers because I feel like it should be a maternal instinct to protect their young from systems and even from the fathers. We know with the animal kingdom, often the mothers will have to protect their young from the father for various reasons. But there is some culpability with the males too. I do have some sympathy for cut fathers who pass this along because they're not able to consider or confront the possibility that they were harmed. It's a lot easier for them to check out. So what do you think about that dynamic?
Yeah, so I'd say from the perspective of the fathers or the perspective of men, there's much more of a psychological mind fuck that's going on, although I think it is going on to some degree for women as well, where you first have to get over the fact that you've been harmed in this way, and this could have been something that was very traumatic and negative for you. I personally found that extremely difficult to get over myself. So through my own experience, this split my mind in half, essentially.
Me too.
So that's something that a lot of men have to deal with first before being able to confront this is, oh shit, I'm a victim of genital mutilation, essentially. And that had wide-ranging downstream implications for my sexuality and my life. So I think women don't have that same experience that they have to get over, and this psychological gate that they have to get through before addressing this and being able to make the correct decision, if you will. Although I think it's so strange to even, it is a decision right now, but it's really just the decision to commit felony sexual battery or facilitate it on your child. So yes, I think that the challenges that men have to get over to properly address this and move in the correct direction with their child is much different than what the women have to, although there are similarities as well that have to take place here. But because of that, I do find myself being a lot more forgiving of men, if you will, than women. And if that's, that might not be fair or not, but that's just the honest truth is of where I'm at. So it might not even be fair, but that's where I'm at. Although there are similar cultural pressures that affect both sexes, both men and women, and similar types of psychological gates that they have to get through as well. One being, they're worried about their child's mate making fun of them. They're worried about these locker room types of experiences with other men where they're made fun of. So they're worried about not socially fitting in. They've heard all of these statements that are made that affects both men and women, right? They're like, oh, I hear all of these stories about negative stories about intact men, and I don't want my son to experience that. And then also, I think at times the hygienic arguments can be very persuasive
Mm,
for parents. So both go through that, but I think men's hangups can be a lot more challenging for them to break through because of their own personal reality where they're cut themselves. And so where I have less sympathy for women is I'm like, what general anatomy on yourself would you want amputated? So you're willing to facilitate this on your son. What would you want amputated right now? When I ask that question, they say nothing. You know, they don't want anything amputated from themselves. So I'm like, so you're asking the father who had this amputation himself if he wants something amputated. Why don't you look at it from your perspective as well? And they seem to not be able to bridge that gap very easily. Where I feel like for myself, if the mother was saying, hey, you know, I had a clitoral hood amputation surgery and I want to do it for our daughter, like I would be looking to get authorities involved. I'd be saying, hey, you have serious mental health issues. This is certainly not somebody that I wanted to have a child with or want to have a child with. You know, you're looking to cause severe, you know, genital harm to our child. This is extremely perverse and something very violent. So that's immediately where my brain would turn to. And the same experience is not happening for a lot of women right now. And I think there is this cultural inertia. There's all of these justifications that they can give, but at the end of the day, they have similar anatomy themselves. They wouldn't want it amputated. They don't have the same psychological hangups. Um, I don't understand why they're not being stronger guardians in a lot of instances of their child. So women can come and debate this with me. You know, if you want to reach out, if you're listening to this and you really disagree with me, I'd love for you to reach out. I have this debate with women all the time, and what I find is that they never have a that you know they're never have a great argument. So that's just the reality at the end of the day. This is something very bizarre behavior in my opinion from the mother side of this, and obviously the fatherly side as well. But I have a lot more hangups with the mothers, and that is the reality.
mm. Yeah, well said. Um, I think it's also interesting how they will default to the father's opinion because he has a penis, right? But he doesn't have the normal anatomy that they're considering amputating.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And she really does have a homologous structure or homologous. I can't remember how to pronounce it off the top of my head.
right.
And she wouldn't want that removed from herself. Although do think there is a severe lack of anatomical understanding. They don't even recognize. They think this is something very different than it really is, and it's being presented to them as a little flap of tissue. So there is obviously a lack of understanding on both parents' parts. Although it's hard to say why you didn't refine and mature your understanding further. Like before you have something amputated from your child, you should have a good mental mind map of what it is that you're getting amputated. But we see this across the board in surgeries, actually, of all sorts of anatomy. Like I know you had your appendix removed, but a lot of people who get their appendix removed, they don't understand the function of the appendix. A lot of people historically who got their tonsils and adenoids amputated in a very routine fashion had no understanding of the downstream implications of doing so, or that these structures are immunological structures that play a pretty significant role in your immune system. There was no understanding of that. And that's something that does really escape me. Why, you're going to have a literal amputation, surgical amputation of a component of your body, and you're not going to research what the function of this is. That to me is kind of impossible to understand, actually, where I think the way my brain was tuned from a young age was just to look deeper into all sorts of things, but certainly around my actual anatomy and what the function of these different parts are. That's something that's always been very intuitive to me to give a lot of consideration to that. So,
Mm. Well, that's great because I was tricked into getting my wisdom teeth removed.
Right. Well, me as well. Well, me as well on that one, actually, as well on that one. That one's a hard one. That because it's not fully developed yet, and it can cause you pain and things like that. But certainly me on that one, when I was 18 years old. So before my brain had really matured to the depth that it is now, I definitely and I had the same pressure from parents and things like that. And I totally regret it. My situation was egregious, though. They weren't even coming in wrong or improperly. They were perfectly erupting. And there was absolutely no reason to even give any consideration to it. There was no pain or anything like that. They were just perfectly erupting in. They had enough space, and I would have had these major four teeth in my mouth that I think would have even um, improved kind of my bite structure and my jaw structure, right? They're erupting through jawbone, they're displacing jawbone a little bit, they're making your jaws a little bigger, they're reinforcing kind of your bite, they're major like platform teeth that help you chew and grind. Like we're supposed to have them. They're a natural part of our maturation and through puberty. And I would much rather have had them than lost them or at the very least, at least had them amputated routinely, essentially, for no reason at all. And you look at how their nerve roots are being connected to your head and your brain, really, even in some ways. And it's just profound, actually, how significant these teeth could actually be. And having them amputated could cause a cascade of downstream implications. So that's one you're fair enough that I got totally um, bamboozled on, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had lots of that cascade of downstream effects. So, wisdom teeth removal is a prophylactic thing. Typically, they're removed for no good reason. It's just to prevent a future problem,
Hmm.
and it's done from 16 to 18 years old. And I thought everybody did it, so I agreed to it. Was happy to get some painkillers, so I
Right. Yeah. I was in the same boat. I'm like, oh, I get some Vicodin or something. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I've had nothing but problems ever since.
Yeah.
At the time, extreme pain, some infection, cleared up eventually. But I've had ear pain and jaw pain ever since for about 10 years. So I went to the holistic dentist and asked them to take a look at that wisdom teeth area. And sure enough, I still had cavitations 10 years later. And a cavitation is basically a void that,
Pocket.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like a pocket or a void that never closed down correctly. And it can harbor infection and have symptoms throughout the whole body. Because, like you said, the meridians of the teeth and the nerves of the teeth are connected to major organs, the nervous system, and it's also related to the appendix. So perhaps my appendix failed because of the teeth surgery. But I recently got those cavitations repaired by the dentist, and it has helped. I don't have the ear pain all night anymore. It's been hell for about 10 years having ear
That's
pain.
wild, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a huge one I regret. But if I had learned the natural functions of the teeth, of it providing that bite structure, that widened jaw, the stronger facial structure, I would have kept them because, like you said, by removing these, it kind of collapses the jaw. The mechanical force is no longer there. So just like
And
an
the mechanic, it's not like they really do help distribute the bite force, I think, in certain
yeah,
instances. Like it's a process of us maturing as human beings. And we get these four large, it's not just, oh, extra teeth if you lose one. I don't believe that at all. I think it's like a final stage of maturation for our jaws and our bite platform
right.
itself. Like we're meant, yeah, to have these. And they kind of it's our final form, if you will, of the maturation of our whole bite platform and our jaws. So
Mm,
um yeah, it's a shame that that is so, it's a tragedy in my opinion, actually. And there's more and more people who are starting to think this way. I spoke with one YouTube podcaster named Jaw Hacks is his name, actually,
okay.
on about 3 years ago. And he actually had 8 teeth removed. He had his four wisdom teeth and then four additional premolars removed. And it was presented to him as a way to kind of fix the occlusion of his teeth or how the teeth meet together or the jaws meet together, and then also help close some gaps, I think, in his teeth as well. But he's had nothing but problems since then and had to do years of additional therapy to kind of get his palate expanded. Like it collapsed his palate, and so they needed to expand the palate more. And that's actually the best way. No, we're really getting lost in the weeds here, but I love this subject matter. Really, the best way to preserve the wisdom teeth is the expansion of the palate. On the top and bottom, actually. Ideally, if you can do that. And then you can make enough room for the wisdom teeth to sit comfortably in the back. The more you expand the palate, the less risk there is of the wisdom teeth. I can't remember the exact term, but them growing in from the wrong direction or being impacted as well. They can't push up. So really, we should be doing a lot more expansion in children of their palates. And also it should all be, the focus should really be on expansion and forward growth, and bracing at the wrong time can impact that. Like really, orthodontics in general, in my opinion, has to radically evolve. And I think it will in the near future, as there seems to be this increased understanding of facial aesthetics. And some people don't like getting into this topic, but Gen Z is like fixated on looksism right now. Like one of their
Yeah.
most popular influencers, his name is Clavicular. I'm not sure if you come across this guy yet. He's kind of an ass in a lot of ways, but he's really pushing through this theory of looksism and around so much privilege being attached to your physical appearance. And that people, yeah, and that facial aesthetics and height and things like that, they lead to significantly more privilege. And it's almost like a similar argument around racism and things like that that's being made around looksism. But, and this is negative and positive in some ways, but it is leading to a positive growth, I think, in how to mature the jaws and your bite platform in the optimal way, because those things lead to proper functionality, but they also lead to better aesthetics. Like there's an intimate relationship between optimal functionality and aesthetics as well. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
though, not to get lost in the weeds too much there, but I'm fascinated by that subject matter.
Well, yeah, I am too. I think it relates to intactivism too. The natural functions of the foreskin are protection, pleasure, lubrication, connection, and there is somewhat of an education gap there. It's not being taught. The medical textbooks don't have it. The doctors don't know the functions of the foreskin.
Right.
They're taught how to cut it off, but yeah. So
And there is
it's
maybe an aesthetic to it. Somehow we've gotten twisted to think that this exposed exposed glands and amputated mobile skin system. Like we need to find a better way to frame the foreskin, I think, as well, because it's so easily dismissible by the general public right now when you just say foreskin. Like this is ridiculous, but what if we called it like the soul skin or something? That's ridiculous. But
yeah,
the argument that we're really making is that it's our primary sexual sensory anatomy.
yeah.
So that's a there is an argument to even be made that, well, I'm not really spiritual, so saying like, oh, it's part of your soul, but it sometimes feels that way to me, to be honest with you. Like,
Well, I would argue it is because when an embryo develops, the sex organs are basically like the main determinator, the main growth organ. Um, I do think that it's part of our identity on multiple levels, the spiritual, the soul, all of that. So I do agree.
right.
I've
Yeah.
also heard it
Whether
say
that,
it's the root chakra, whether that's
right.
true or not. So
Yeah, me as well. And it's the impact that it's had on me and the experiences that I have. I feel like I've lost a part of my soul, even though I'm not spiritual necessarily. There is a sense of loss that really transcends anything I can even explain. Like it's the closest way that you can connect to a human being. It's like our natural drug
yeah,
mechanism, or the tissue that can stimulate our brain in a way that is very drug-like. I don't think that's the
yeah,
best comparison, but it's like a euphoric experience.
right,
Um, that has been radically diminished for me.
yeah.
And I think that was the intention as
Hmm.
well initially, when this, like historically, I think the intention was to diminish this male, sexual spiritual energy. in certain ways. And that's so heartbreaking. Like I don't know the most accurate way, or I feel like I'll never be able to frame that to somebody. I want to find the best way to illuminate that, but it just feels impossible with words. It's really this emotion that can't be conveyed very easily, where it really it can destroy a man's spirit. And I think that's why they can run away from this so powerfully is and the worst part is like we know in society that we shouldn't ever mess with somebody's sexuality, and that this is something that's very sacred in most, even for men in this degree. And then just the flagrancy of having your sexual anatomy amputated just flies in the face of everything that we're saying. That's why I think it oftentimes is hard for men to forgive as well, is this is a flagrant violation of existing standards and norms that we have around impacting somebody's sexuality and messing with their genitals and things like that. Like, really, two things are happening concurrently right now. We're having our sexual tissues amputated, and we all understand that if you fuck with a man's penis, it's over for you. So somehow both of these things are existing at the same time, where we're just flagrantly harming men, but we know that men, would be very upset about this, but somehow it's all getting brushed under the rug.
Mm,
Um,
well said.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think, yeah, like you said, I think it was part of the motivation, especially originally, like historically with the cults and the religions. I think it was to break their natural connection to God, their natural sense of wholeness and spirituality, and to replace it with artificial systems, whether that's man made religion or slavery. But yeah, I think it is basically slavery.
right. Yeah. And if we could go back to that video real quick, there is one element of that I want to show real quick. And do you have a time check on where we're at here? Have we been talking for like, does it say? I can't see it in the Zoom. Oh, yeah, I can't see it anywhere.
Doesn't say for me either. You want me to put
Interesting.
that video back up?
Yeah, because I just wanted to, not necessarily the video, but um the graphic that you have to the right of it. I believe it was the same slide. Yeah, this slide here. And I just want to see if actually, can you see this writing on your screen? Like, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's being recorded as well. One thing that I want to show is, so we see here in the left-hand side graphic of the penis that it's showing like, to be honest with you, for a lot of us in the United States and really globally as well, this would be actually a pretty conservative cut for a lot of men,
Yeah.
where a lot of us are cut even further down, essentially the shaft. And the reason is this is showing almost like an erect male penis in some ways. Um, but really, like, let's say the infant's penis goes to here, like this is the size of, I'll do it right here. This is the size of their shaft, maybe.
Hmm.
And then the foreskin, when it's on erect, is cocooning way above. Maybe not that much, but sometimes almost
Yeah.
that much above. So it's cocooning way above. So think about it as a structure like this.
Right.
And so in order to fully expose the glands, they have to cut to right here. And
Exactly.
so it's this radical amputation, and that's the cosmetic presentation, I guess, that the parents and the physicians are looking for. So it results, so when they have to remove this much to expose the glands, it results in a lot of us have like scars literally this far down our shaft. And
Right.
the whole skin system, I'm coining it now a full sleeve amputation
Mm.
of the entire skin system. This is genuinely a sexual disability
Hmm.
for a lot of men. That you have the whole mobile skin system, and what's challenging to communicate here. And I have this project in mind where we illustrate this better. The whole underside of the tissue that they're amputating is erogenous. It's the primary sexual sensory tissue on the male penis.
Yeah.
So that's not, everyone is like fixating on the glands, but
Hmm.
the underside layer of the foreskin is in some ways considered more erogenous than the glands is. And
Oh, for sure.
they really work as a system together though. Like they're stimulating each other when the inner foreskin is rubbing up and down the gland. So the reality is that the majority of the public is not going to be able to build that mental model without a lot of assistance. And so I think a major project that we could spearhead is funding an artist or a set of artists to create palatable illustrations and 3D videos
Okay.
that we can distribute and disseminate on social media. Not
Yeah.
just, oh, we can, it's only going to be appropriate in these certain contexts and we can't get through these restrictions that are on these social media platforms around posting sexual content. Most platforms do have significant leeway for this type of educational content. Actually, not all, but the majority do. And we'd have to look into that a little further. But I often find that's something that's really missing from the
Okay.
current space. Like all of the graphics and illustrations I see, and even the videos I see, they're like extremely low production quality in a lot of instances, and they don't convey professionalism and authority in a lot of instances as well. And I think that is something that maybe the other side can do well in certain instances.
Yeah.
Um, the opposition to us, if you will. And that's something that we could potentially play a huge role. Like if we have something that has high production quality, that's sometimes just something enough to say, hey, these guys know what they're talking about here. These guys are really onto something here. Just by elevating the production quality alone, or the authority that we can convey through that.
Okay. I really like that idea. Hopefully, the medical organizations will realize that we're the experts now and they'll enlist us to
Yeah,
help them. But
exactly. Yeah.
I appreciate you mentioning the acropostian, the foreskin of the adolescent, because it is much different. So I'm going to put a slide up here
And
to
by
show.
acroposin, we're saying the overhang essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. So here's a slide
Yeah.
where I show that. So
Hmm.
the infant foreskin does look and work a lot differently than the adult. So as an adolescent or an infant, this is a sealed, adhered structure to the glands. And it's actually the acropostian, the part that hangs over right there, is actually an extension of the urethra. So when this is cut, that's why boys cannot no longer control their urination, or they may pee on people changing their diapers, because it's actually the acropostian is actually an extension of the urinary exit and has like that sphincter capability of controlling urination exit. So it does look a lot different, and typically by age 10 or even as late as puberty, the foreskin will start to naturally retract, and that adhesion from the glands will start to dissolve. But
Right.
yeah, so by circumcising an infant to all the way back to exposing that glands, by the time they grow up and become adult, that scar will move from the glands all the way down the shaft, sometimes halfway or even further. So there's no cut here line. There's no standard or there's no correct amount, to take off. So it causes so many problems. I mean, the list of complications of circumcision is like 20 things deep, and there's almost no risk to being intact. The biggest risk to being intact for a child is to be forcibly retracted by a pediatrician at a well visit.
Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to show that real quick.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And can you leave that up for 1 second? Because I do want to show this. This isn't even the presentation of a neonate's penis, though, to be honest with you. Like it even, in my opinion, from the actual photographs that I've seen and the video evidence that I've seen, it's extending like sometimes even more than maybe what we see in this illustration right here. Like
Mm,
maybe it goes all the way up to here. Like it's extending like and it's almost like cocooning. It's thicker maybe right here as well, a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
And maybe we could like when we create additional graphics and illustrations, we could just model them based on the photographic evidence that we come across to see that. Because it's really challenging otherwise to communicate why we're having such why so many men are having such radical amputations where it's like, well, on an infant, it doesn't look like it's halfway down the shaft when they're on erect, but then on an adult male, there's seriously guys. I mean, it's even further. It's like
Right.
literally all the way down here. So how the hell is that happening?
Mm,
We need to kind of present that narrative on how it's occurring and why so many men in the United States are literally straight up sexually disabled because of this. And we're not talking like just millions of men. It's like tens of millions at the very least. Like it possibly could be like 40% plus have had these radical that exist right now in the United States of cut men have these radical C2 and below cuts, or if the audience isn't familiar, coverage index 2, which is kind of a index created by the foreskin restoration community to explain or highlights the different degrees of severity, and C1 and C2 being the most invasive or the most tissue has been amputated. And some people even consider C0 on the index as well. Or then beyond that, it's maybe really considered a botch, where you don't really even have enough tissue to you need something done to even be able to have a normal life. Really, I mean, you're going to be in severe pain all the time if you don't have something corrective surgery done.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah, sometimes so much skin is removed that it pulls the penis back into the body, and that's called dead
yeah,
penis.
right, yeah, yeah.
Well, I like your idea. If we could show like a progression on how this cut, um, how the penis matures, and how this cut basically gets worse. I consider circumcision to be a slow death of the penis because of the keratinization, the desensitivity, the callousing that builds up over time. So, a teenager or young adult, they may not experience sexual problems, maybe some premature ejaculation or discomfort, but by the time he's middle aged, he's going to experience significant penile problems. Erectile dysfunction is an epidemic in the United States. Over 50% of middle aged men are on erectile dysfunction drugs. So
Right, yeah.
that's 150 million men.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, it really started going downhill at like 24 or 25, to be honest with you, although I am in the more severe side of this. Um, it's yeah, it can go to, I mean, it was always poor to some degree, but then it became so dramatic that it was there would be times where I'd feel no sexual pleasure at all in the entire, even though I could get an erection, it would be like literally the entire time I would feel little to nothing. And at the very end, there'd be this little squeak of pleasure, and then it's completely dull and lifeless again.
Yep.
So, and that's something to communicate is that a lot of people are saying, even if you can get an erection, men can feel virtually no sexual pleasure the entire time. So that's something that's just nobody knows about, really, or it's never communicated openly right now. Women are like, oh, you can get an erection. So, you must, it's working
Right.
basically. And it's like, no, guys, there's way more going on than just that. And that, that's just one element of the whole process for us.
Mm.
So they think that, oh, erection means sexual pleasure, even orgasm means sexual pleasure. And that's true to some degree, but there's way more of the experience that can just be completely missing. And we can have orgasms and literally feel nothing, actually. You can have an orgasm and literally basically feel nothing except a release. So
Mm.
that's not commonly distributed or disseminated to the public at all right now.
Mm.
So they're like, oh, well, if you can do that, then what's the problem? What's the problem? And it's like, well, there's really a lot to get into here than about that.
Yeah, great points. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I could definitely attest to my experience going downhill the older I get. And there's a certain aspect of disassociation in that sexual act because there's that mixture of pleasure and pain and not being able to feel it, you know?
Hmm.
So it's it kind of destroys the intimacy of the moment.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
It certainly can.
so yeah, I think it also causes a lot of discomfort for women.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
the tight, erect skin causing friction, loss of lubrication.
It's
Um,
so obvious. I mean, I just had an experience recently. It was so obvious. Like the things that my partner, the woman, had to do to facilitate it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like I'm not going to get into it too much. It's so obvious once you put the pieces together, though. It's like jabbing like a broom handle into somebody versus this lubed piston or something.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't know the best way to frame it, but it's like it's ridiculous how much it impacts it for the woman as well. Once you can put the pieces together, and now that's what I partially think about as well
Hmm.
when I'm having sex is like, it sucks to even have to think about that, but I'm like, this could be so much better for both of us as
Yeah.
well. This is, yeah. So it's heartbreaking, man. It really is. It's like this is such an important dimension of what it means to be a human and our human experience, and for every animal, I guess. And we know that we shouldn't be messing with an anatomy, and the fact that people think that this improves things, it's like visual observation, like the fact that the physicians are are and I think a lot of them know better, and a lot of them have maybe for a long time, but just casual visual observation, it's this mobile skin system moving up and down. So why would that not be this extremely pleasure, like it's moving up and down the glands, even if you don't understand the significance of the inner foreskin, you know it's this moving skin system that's like massaging the glands. How is that not like a major dimension of male sexuality? How can you not establish that from casual observation? This mobile skin system moving up and down, even if you didn't know the full depth of understanding of the inner layer of the foreskin being the primary sexual sensory tissue. In some ways, I think initially it's easier to convey to an audience that, hey, this is just a continuation of the gland's surface area as it's coming up inside of itself. Like, if you think the glans is important, you should absolutely think the inner foreskin is important. If you think the surface area of the glans is important, then you should think that the inner foreskin is even more important.
Hmm.
Like we have such a hard time conveying that. And the comparisons to like FGM, I think are so accurate. This feels like an amputation of our clitoral tissues. It
Right.
really does. I think that is a proper way to frame and explain this to people at times is that the sensory loss can be that severe
Hmm.
that you're doing here. So this is in some instances, they're amputating the majority of the sexual sensory tissue on a man's penis. The vast majority. Like it can be like for me, it was legitimately like 75% of the total amount of sexual sensory tissue on my penis was amputated.
Hmm.
Like, how can you even explain how devastating that is and heartbreaking that is? And then the whole mobile skin system
Hmm.
is amputated away. So this whole functional dimension, and they're like, well, if you can get an erection, what's the problem? And this is where you literally, you start getting into a type of psychosis about this. You're like, oh, well, maybe if your head was removed, it'd be cleaner as well. So we could clean you up by getting that head off. You'd be a clean young man or woman now with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I like to joke around that people if people are saying, "Oh, it's too much work to clean the foreskin," I said, "Well, it's so easy a caveman can do it, and here we are."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So it really actually, that's more of a um social function, I think. Like you don't really even need to clean it to have it be healthy
Especially not
necessarily.
as a child, especially when
Right.
it's
Yeah.
sealed to the glands. But
Right. But if you
perhaps
think about evolutionary, if that's the perspective, like why would we be not, well, they, but why would we be engineered in a way, if you will, or evolve in a way in which you have to use like water? Like that's not necessarily an inherently natural thing to have to do or even clean it at all. So I think it's essentially designed in a way to never really need any sort of thorough cleaning of any
yeah,
kind. And maybe just the masturbatory or sexual practices are the cleaning in itself. I think it is probably more of a social function. Like people are saying, oh, well, in the desert,
yeah,
when they didn't have water, this makes sense more. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It never made sense. This was never done I don't think they ever were considering hygiene then at all, personally.
right,
Um, I think it's just a way to frame it in a more palatable way, especially for the Abrahamics and things like that. They really want to find some alternative meaning to this beyond, oh, we're just, you know, mutilating men's sexual pleasure. They really are desperately, desperately looking for a different answer than that. And I don't think there's any substance to their position at all. I think you could be in a hot desert environment and take no showers, and there isn't this increased risk of disease and things like that for this system. I really don't think it's something that ever has to be washed in the sense that this improves the health of it and
Mm,
makes it less likely to get these sexually transmitted diseases. There's probably even some truth to the fact that when you radically disrupt the biome through aggressive washing and applying soaps and things like that, that it makes it easier for the quote unquote bad bacteria to more easily populate in that area versus when there is this healthy biome. But it's hard to say. I think there are certain instances where washing it and cleaning it can, make it a more healthier environment or things like that. But it's on a case by case basis. And then people talk about bacteria. They don't understand that our whole bodies are saturated internally and externally with it. So like, oh, it reduces the chance of bacteria. I'm like, there's literally your whole skin system, your whole body, your whole internal, external body is saturated with bacteria all the time. So when somebody says something like, you're like, you don't know anything about the world. We got to get rid of all the bacteria. I'm like, look at your vagina though. Like when
right.
a woman says that, I'm like, you're literally discharging blood and mucus and smegma, and your uterine wall lining is essentially decomposing and being discharged from your vagina. And you have anything to say on intact men? I mean, it's the craziest shit ever,
Right.
dude. It's the craziest shit ever.
Wow.
Um, when I see women, bad mouthing intact men, I'm like, how are you not aware? And they're talking about like odors and things like that. I'm like, you guys always kind of have an odor and
Yeah.
things like this as well. Like it honestly at times seems like a type of projection. I don't even think it is, but
Mm,
it just like feels that way to me sometimes. And I'm like, what if we just started hacking away your clitoral tissues and things to make you would think it's heinous, but you don't apply that same thinking pattern to our anatomy. And so
mm,
at times it just feels like this type of domination by women that they can just run their mouths in this way about us and we would
yeah.
be ran out of the room. Like
Right.
it makes me want to kind of dominate these women in this situation. If I'm being, and people are going to like, oh, how dare you? How dare you? Shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up. Like we're going to run our mouths about this now and put people in their place. And if that upsets you, fuck off. That's what I have to say now. So it is a situation where I want to begin dominating the public here on this subject matter because the consequences are so severe otherwise. And whether that's the best strategy or not, I'm open to that discussion. But honestly, I found that pussyfooting around the situation leads me nowhere. And that people are almost looking for an authoritative answer at times or an authoritative body to just lay down the law on this. And I found a lot of success through that personally, where I just don't retreat and I don't try and convey this in any other way than it's felony sexual battery. It's an amputation of our primary sexual sensory tissue. It actually does look very poor. It reflects very poorly on you in sometimes even a catastrophic way if you're supportive of a practice like this. And I don't retreat like I was saying, like I find a lot of intactivists do at times. And I'm not even trying to be too critical of the intactivists, but it's all about welcoming people in and things like that. And I think that can be effective and persuasive. And there's a lot of different angles to, I guess, tackle this from. And we all have our own different strategies, but that's not my strategy anymore. Is necessarily the education dimension of it, or solely the education. I think that's one dimension of it, but it's just kind of laying down the law on people. Um, and who knows, I could be wrong about the effectiveness and persuasiveness about that, but it's almost the only direction that I can go down now for my own psychology and my own emotional state.
Yeah. That's powerful. I think if you're speaking your truth and coming from a place of genuine concern and authenticity, that it will connect with the right people. And I really think that you're one of the few who understands and communicates with um, the true extremity of this radical alteration to the human body. Um, so I appreciate your take on it and your strong stance. And we need everybody's different angle and different voice on this. So it's all we can do. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to starting my pro se lawsuit. I'm going to do that after I get back from the Bloodstained Men tour. But it may not go anywhere. But for me, I feel like that'll be part of my process to get my truth out and to basically put the legal system on notice. They may shoot me down, but at least I'm putting them on notice that people are unhappy about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking to do the same here eventually myself, although the reality is I'm kind of being pressured and not necessarily pressured into it, but I'm almost not even doing it for myself because I think it'll be so ineffective. And I think that it's more of a numbers game that we have at the moment where we need more people um, filing these suits and or these complaints, criminal complaints or civil ones. And there needs to be this cultural shift that happens first before, because my perspective is the courts are really set up in a way to defend the establishment here and not to get justice for us. So it's all going to be about maintaining the status quo and shielding these guilty parties from any sort of liability at all. And it's partially because they understand how quickly something like this can snowball once you set a precedent in one court. So there has to be some level of coordination here. I think that's even going on between the different courts, between these different nodes of power that, and especially once we start getting more momentum, like they're going to really try and nip this before we can establish any sort of precedent. I think that's possibly happening with Eric's cases in Oregon, the equality clause case. I'm sure you're familiar with that to some degree. I think that that's going to be stonewalled essentially because they not solely, but because all the courts understand that if a precedent is set in one, they can basically use this precedent in an extremely powerful way in other courts as well. Although I can't say that for certain, but that's my hunch in a lot of ways is that why would they not understand this? We see this in all sorts of other situations where courts know that if a precedent gets set, that it can be leveraged in other courts. So,
Hmm.
and then the people that are involved in this that are perpetuating this, I think have deep understanding of how the courts, need to operate so they can continue doing this as well. And they have some relationship with the courts even and the legislative bodies to really shield themselves completely. Like, I think if they were concerned at all, then they wouldn't be doing like we're in a position where they literally are have no concern at all about legal repercussions. I mean, they'd laugh us out of the room, the
Hmm.
physicians. So they know to some degree they're completely shielded, or they wouldn't be doing this if
Hmm.
they had any. But I think we can put them on notice to some degree, but we need the numbers to really we can get it's not going to go forward. All of our suits are not going to go forward, and we basically can get ran out of the room right now. But if we had 1,000, not even 1,000. I mean, we need like tens of thousands of motivated men to really begin doing a dent in this. And that seems just so daunting right now, how far we have to go,
Yeah.
and how few men are willing to openly discuss. Like 99.9% of the men that are even horrifically impacted by this, like never talk about it publicly. That's
Right.
the craziest part is the vast, it's the percentage of men that never discuss this is unbelievable for how badly, even the ones that are traumatized, they literally cannot speak about this publicly right now. And obviously, there's understanding on why that's the case, but I'm beginning to become less and less understanding of how it's so many. Like, I think that's an accurate percentage that I described there. Yeah, 99.9%, maybe outside of a few public or a few settings or a few conversations, they'll never discuss this. And even if they experience trauma every single day, never discuss it. And I think that is an extension of just a lot of men in general feeling uncomfortable kind of sharing their griefs and issues that maybe fall outside this narrow range of things they feel they can talk about. But it's challenging for men and women to say, hey, I feel genitally mutilated. But I will say, women feel very comfortable talking about sexual assault and rape and things like that, where I think we feel as men at times, if we do discuss these things, it can diminish us in complicated ways, even our sexual prowess. I mean, this type of admission, I think, can um, damage your ability to operate with the other sex. That was a very clinical way to describe that. but your ability to have game and aura with
Right.
women maybe is one way to
Right.
describe it. The reality is that it does diminish that in certain instances to some degree. And it's not something, you want to be vulnerable about because you're worried about that. And I've experienced that personally where it did diminish my quote unquote aura or my um ability to have this type of presence with a woman. And, we can all deny that to some degree, but I think there is a reality to that. And it maybe doesn't impact women to the same degree where men are willing to look past that or they're willing to hold space for that and be very open to this kind of vulnerable state of a person.
Mm,
So,
that is so true. Yeah, I think it may be best to communicate with cut men from a place of camaraderie, just saying, hey, I'm sorry you were cut, you were cheated, your birthright was stolen, um, as opposed to educating them on the harms and their deficit and the loss.
mhm,
It can be overwhelming, but all we need is to get the numbers up as far as men being against this. I recently was recommended to start ballot initiatives, and I had never heard of that. And I looked it up, and apparently you can petition to get some questions on like county voting cycles, and
mhm,
perhaps we could get some ballot initiatives for basic requirements of circumcision, like to have the parents present or to have the person doing it medically trained or to have anesthetic required. Just simple things, but perhaps that could get people thinking. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just
yeah,
we need
it's
a
a tough
way.
one because these incremental improvements, if you will, it almost diminishes our argument
Yeah.
in certain ways because they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, well, I mean, oh, we'll just go then that route
Right.
to, if it's not, it's not genital mutilation then. Because
Mm,
if we're making the argument that it's genital mutilation, then that's literally something like that's off limits to do now.
okay.
So it is hard to say because I'm like that could create a paradigm that it still goes on, but there are these maybe small incremental improvements, and they're not even necessarily really can be fully looked at as an improvement in certain instances. Like it's hard to even say if anesthetic is always going to be better. Like the anesthetic can kill the child, and there's children that die from the anesthetic as well. And then you had potential neurological trauma from even local anesthetics, not even
Mm,
general anesthetics. So it's super dangerous to give an infant. So it's sometimes hard to even say if it is more advantageous to give anesthesia or not. It's really on a case by case basis if anesthesia, yeah,
mm,
is and an anesthetic is optimal.
right.
And then honestly, like getting a medical professional to perform it in a lot of these ritualized circumcisions, there can be a lot less tissue removed than in a hospital sometimes. So you go
Oh,
into the
for sure.
hospital and you
Yeah.
get GOM code down halfway down your penis, and you're now in a way worse position than the typical Jewish ritual circumciser would possibly put you in. So it's
True.
challenging to even say, but I hear your perspective. It's like getting maybe the gears turning in parents' heads, but for me, it's almost too challenging. It's too challenging to even accept. Like it makes society seem so perverse to me. Like now, it almost is easier to accept when it's all abstracted away from the parents. But once we're getting to the point where, like, oh, we are really thinking about it, let's use anesthesia for the amputation. Let's make sure that anesthesia is used for the amputation of our child's sexual anatomy. Now I'm getting just so radicalized in my brain. Now I'm like, I don't think you should ever be a guardian of a child. It's actually wildly inappropriate for you to ever be a guardian of a child. And I would use militant force to prevent you from having any guardianship or ownership of a child ever, actually. And I want to go to war over this now.
Mm,
And you better be ready to put your life on the line to defend your position. And that gets scary, I think, really quick. I think men have gone to war for far less. Men have gone to war over a taxation on tea. And what I want to tell the public is you should not be surprised if men go to war over genital mutilation of children. And this should be a position that you're prepared to put your life on the line for. And people are like, oh, that's so radical. How dare? No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay. What's radical is defiling your child. Going to war to prevent that is um, the natural way things should be. So that's what I would convey to parents and the general public, and that this is something a lot more serious than I think you're giving consideration to right now. And men are starting to get extremely radicalized, and this should be concerning for you if you're a parent who is thinking about mutilating your son. And a lot of us don't even think it is a simple education problem. You know, we think that there are severe problems with you that go well beyond that. Um, and that, yeah, even if you framed it as an education problem, yeah, you could make an argument that Taliban jihadists have an education problem as well, but we still wipe them off the map. So, yeah, you could have an education problem, but it's not necessarily going to shield you from what you think it is right now. So,
Mm,
yeah, that's where we're at.
I love it. Well, thanks for capturing the true essence of it, and how extreme this problem really is.
Yeah,
It's not something we can sweep under the rug anymore.
no, it's not. And it really should have gone away a long time ago. It should never have existed. But the fact that we're in 2026 here and you can look into all of this, you can research it all yourself, and it's still going on, is unbelievable to me. So, especially in these modern countries like the United States, where in the way we view sexuality, it's unfathomable, is the way that I would describe it. So, but things are changing slower than I would like, but things are slowly evolving. It's entrenched though in a way that is confusing here at this point, where I think even when we get to a minority, and who knows what the metrics are right now or what the percentage is, like people say it's half at this point. I don't even fully know if that's true. It could be a little higher. But even when we get to 40, 30%, there's still going to be these parents that are so gung-ho about this. Like, um, it's really like we have to pursue more than just abandonment. We have to pursue criminalization of this to really shield all children. And people are making, saying, oh, we need to make these religious exemptions to be able to actually make our way through the courts. And that, while that might be true, it's just so heartbreaking that you have to abandon these children because of the religious dimension of this, so they can sacrifice the tissue to I consider a demon. Like what just reasonable God would say, hey, we need this amputation of our sexual tissue, of your child's sexual tissue, so they can be in our tribe or they can be in our religion. That just presents as a demon
Yeah.
to me. So, and I'm not going to get in this whole side of this, but not too much at least, but that's something that's difficult to live with in our society. Is I think that these Abrahamic religions basically were, I don't think there's validity to it. And I don't want to get too controversial, but I also think that if there was validity to it, they would be worshiping a demon. And so it's just their whole identity is offensive. Like their whole being to me is offensive to the dignity of man. And so no one ever discusses that, but it's like challenging living in this multicultural, multi-religious society when you have these types of disagreements with people. I'm like, I don't ever really want to see you. It's challenging for me to form relationships with you and feel respect towards you and things like that, because I think that you are worshiping an entity that demands tissue sacrifices or has in the past previously from children. So to me, it's like a worship of Epstein or something. It's like, no, you actually can't openly, I don't want you openly presenting in my society even. And it makes me want to advocate for things like segregation, not necessarily based on race, but our ideals, because I just don't want to be around you
Mm,
anymore. It's not going to work in our society. Like I feel diminished by your presence.
yeah.
And that's just such a shame that this practice has caused all these powerful feelings um,
Mm.
like that.
Well, I think the main reason that the Abrahamics have been so prolific and so successful for thousands of years is because of circumcision. I think it's a trauma based mind control weapon that they use to create slaves who are subservient to their tradition, and subservient to becoming soldiers, and earning their promised land. Islam is basically Judaism 3.0, and
Yeah.
like you said, it's holy war for them to die in holy war, jihad. they're promised great riches and rewards in heaven. So it radicalizes people, and the difficulty we're up against is that the thing we're trying to end, the circumcision, the genital mutilation, is their main weapon. That's why they're so extreme, you know.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it is this type of binding ritual. I think not just for the individual, but it can be for the whole family as well.
Exactly.
Once you are involved in something like this, it just locks you in. Like we've seen a lot of the ritualized types of ceremonies as well, and it just looks like this powerful moment where the entire kind of family, in a way, or it can be the whole family and the whole community in some sense, they go all in on something. They see a child suffering and in pain as well, and it's kind of this, if we did this, then how can we back out? We did this
Yeah.
powerful thing that now caused trauma, we caused pain, we took anatomy from somebody's body, and it forces everyone to go all in, not just the child, in my opinion. Because then if we back out, then this whole thing was meaningless,
Mm.
kind of in some ways as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. Yeah, the
so
etymology of the word religion means to bind again. So this,
really,
yeah, lagon means to bind, and to bind again.
that makes
But
sense. Wow, I've never really considered that, but yeah, that's pretty
well, I'm
interesting.
glad you brought it up because it is a binding ritual. It's said to make the infant belong to the tribe. Well, that means they own him. If something belongs, that implies ownership. So it is a slavery system.
Right. But I'm also trying to hint at it's also really for the tribe as
Right.
well. Like
Right.
there's really a dimension of to it where it further binds the tribe to themselves.
That's true.
Um,
A trauma bond.
so this is a tough one to
Yeah.
unravel because they're so committed to it. They're so locked into it.
Yeah.
Um, and there's been times where Christianity or communities of Christians that have um then the majority really historically have not done this though as well. That is the truth. So you can't necessarily say all Abrahamics, but then we see it reintroduced into certain community Christian communities historically
That's
and
true.
in the modern day here.
Yeah.
So they seem to have somewhat of a proclivity towards it because of the biblical significance and the biblical historical precedents.
Well, it certainly dampens the impact and severity of it when they read it in their Bible hundreds of times,
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't practice
100%.
it.
Yeah.
I know for me, growing up Christian, I was desensitized to the word circumcision.
Yeah.
So I never knew what it meant, but because I had read it 100,000 times, I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, it definitely creates a framework in which they can more easily justify it, even if it's not happening to their own community. They can say, well, if it's in the Bible, it can't be that bad. If it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. Like
Yeah.
sometimes they say that, yeah. Or
Somebody said,
it's not that bad, yeah.
yeah, somebody said that the other day on Facebook, and I said, crucifixion was good enough for Jesus too, so why don't you volunteer yourself for that?
Right, exactly, yeah. It's and there's all sorts of things in the Bible that we could reference and bring up, yeah.
Yeah.
But they think that that's such a strong argument. And they're not even considering, like, I think even back then they considered it a sacrifice. There's even,
Oh, yeah,
Jews now and Muslims now that consider it a sacrifice. Like you'll
for sure.
communicate with them like, oh, all the harms. They're like, we know though. We know it's hard. Yeah, we know about this 100%. We think it's harmful. Yeah, that's part of the ritual. And
Right.
you're like, oh shit, what argument do I have now? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of freedom of religion, but I do think children deserve freedom of religion. You know, they
Right.
children and animals don't have religion. They're pure and innocent, and this stuff should not be forced on them.
Right. I wonder how bad off we would be though, or how well off we would be if society was more restrictive in this regard and say, hey, it'd be impossible to implement. And I don't want to get into too
Yeah,
much, but if all Abrahamic religions were basically criminalized, I think we would be um, in a better state. I think our world would be in a better state. So It's just not really a realistic thing to even present right now. So it's not even maybe worth discussing, but beyond just these interesting philosophical conversations. But I think it is leading us down the wrong direction. It's creating escape hatches
Hmm.
for people that shouldn't exist. Um, and it's leading us astray, in my opinion. I don't think there's validity to this ideology, and I think that it's wasting our time and in certain instances leading us down very harmful paths that extend way beyond circumcision, actually.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
Well, hopefully humanity can outgrow this stuff and shrug it off. It's been a huge burden. And I think at a time, thousands of years ago, perhaps this stuff was needed to give people identity and create strong tribal ties. But certainly in the modern world, where we're 6 steps removed from talking to anybody across the world, this kind of tribal identity and demented thinking and artificial systems are totally not needed. So hopefully we can evolve and raise human consciousness and become more level-headed.
fair enough. Yeah. And the problem, though, is that it actually can have certain advantages for the tribe, like not necessarily just circumcision, but tribing up,
Yeah,
becoming a tribe. It's actually something we really struggle with outside of the tribe, or when we don't have our own tribe.
that's
We
true.
struggle competing with other tribes.
Right, that's true.
So I think when we're outside of a tribe, we struggle to have the influence that we want to have as a unit, as a tribe, like these other tribes do, where they're able to have, able to leverage really control because of their unity internally.
Mm,
And a lot of us who maybe are um, brought towards intactivism, we're naturally very independent, and we've walked away from tribes in a lot of instances or tribal ways of thinking. But I think the unfortunate truth is it's possible we need to tribe up to be able to actually effectively take on these other quote unquote tribes that exist. And it's, I think, really challenging for us to do because of the way our psychology is. And we want to be very independent and go our own way and pursue things from our own angle. And we struggle to really have a hive mind, even in
mm,
certain ways. Yeah.
that's very true.
Well, is there any other points you want to touch on? I think we've gone maybe for an hour here at this point, or possibly a little less. Yeah, don't have a timestamp on anything here, but a
Yeah,
great
no,
conversation. This went a lot better than I thought it was going to go.
awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed it. We covered some good stuff, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. This was really constructive.
Perfect. Yeah, I actually just threw on the meeting timer. I found the setting in Zoom and we've been going for an hour and 30 minutes. So we had a good run there. Time can kind of just get away from you really quick when you're getting into this subject matter.
Yeah, it's such a deep topic
Right.
with so many different layers. But always enjoy talking about it with you.
Yep. You as well, Jeff. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day and we'll catch up again here soon.
All right, appreciate it, Carter.
All right. Yep. See you guys.
Later.